Is being a vegan or a vegetarian for that matter, is that eating style healthier than one that includes protein that comes from animals, so animal-based products? There's been such a movement toward being vegan. Several years ago, a couple decades ago, it was more about being a vegetarian. But then the plant-based movement really took off these last several years. In fact, I've had several clients and potential clients approach me and ask if that would be a good option for them, if it would be a good way to lose weight or to be healthier. So what I want to do is share the facts, simply the facts, in a way that is as unbiased as I can. But before I start, I want to tell you about my new book, Finding Purpose in the Pause, Your Guide to Thriving in Menopause and Beyond. In this book, I cover everything a woman needs to know about perimenopause, the years leading up to menopause, and the transition through menopause into postmenopause. I talk about the hormones involved. I touch on HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy. I discuss nutrition and exercise, strength training. I even lay out a strength training program that would be good for women in midlife and above. This is a book that is comprehensive. It's easy to read because I'm not a medical professional. It's written in layman terms, which makes it pretty accessible for most women to comprehend the information and actually implement the information within their lives. So if you are a woman looking to glide through menopause rather than crash into it, and you have questions about nutrition and exercise, weight loss, fat loss, this is the book for you. I've also been told by a few men that it's helped them to understand their partners better. One man even said it should be a marriage manual because he understood what his wife was going through so much better. So I encourage you to pick up a copy, Finding Purpose in the Pause. You can find it on Amazon, or you can go to my website, carolcovino.com. If you purchase the book, I do have a special gift for you. It's my nutrition 14-day detox. And no, it's not a detox with juicing and aloe vera. It is whole food nutrition, and I walk you through exactly how to reduce bloating, digestive problems, lose weight if that is your goal, lose body fat if that is your goal, and just to be healthier in general. So you can receive this free gift by contacting me either at my email, carol@carolcovino.com, or on Instagram at Carol Covino Fitness, and just screenshot a copy of the order from Amazon with the order number and give me your email. I will send that gift out to you. Or you can fill out the form on my website, carolcovino.com. You can fill out the book form with the order number, and I will send you that free gift. So let's dive into being vegan, being vegetarian, plant-based, animal-based. Which option is best for you? And is there a best option that fits everyone? So first of all, before we start, I am not a medical professional. As I've said, I am a health coach. My background is in personal training, fitness, nutrition, and lifestyle, coaching women in lifestyle habits, women who are really in the range of 45, 50, 60, and above. I've even had clients in their 80s that I've helped, women in their 80s. So it's really that second half of life. But I'm not approaching it from a position of being a doctor or a nurse or even a registered dietitian. So I want to make that distinction. Where this information is coming from is from my own personal coaching experience. It's coming from research and studies I've looked at, podcasts that I've listened to by respected individuals that I know give really sound, good health information, and I wanted to bring it here to you. A lot of what we're going to discuss is based on a study called Debunking the Vegan Myth. And if you're vegan, before you get upset, I want you to keep an open mind, an open heart, open ears, because I'm just going to present the facts, and I'm not saying one way is right, one way is wrong. I just want you to have the information. I think what's happened in nutrition, it's become very polarized and it's become very politicized in a sense, where people are on one camp or another. They're carnivores, so they're eating all meat, or they're vegan, so they're eating all plant-based, maybe vegetarian, where it's a little bit of a mix of some animal products such as cheese and eggs. Then you have the omnivores, which are a mix of the two. So what I'm going to give you is, once again, the facts on how the vegan lifestyle can potentially affect your health and what you should be looking for in your blood tests, and also with supplementation. I highly recommend seeing an integrative practitioner who is open to this, has some understanding of nutrition, or a nutritionist or dietitian that's more on the functional medicine side that would be able to help you navigate through this if you're plant-based. So let's dive into the material. I do want to give one quick shout out to Mike Mutzel. I really was inspired to do this particular podcast by listening to a couple of things on his YouTube channel and on his podcast concerning being plant-based that I found so interesting and relevant that I wanted to share it with my audience. So first of all, I'm going to list some things off that are more likely to occur if you're on a plant-based diet. Now, I'm not saying this occurs with everyone. You always have outliers. So it's interesting to see, but I've actually known individuals that are on a strictly carnivore diet and they're really just eating almost all meat and virtually no vegetables, which I would not agree with that. I do feel that we need these plant-based not products, but we need plants in our life and fruits in our life. So I would disagree with that. But then I've seen people actually thrive on it and improve their health. Then I've seen the opposite, where somebody goes completely herbivore, plant-based, and I don't agree with that either. I don't think that that's the best path for the majority of people, but you have those outliers where it works for them. I mean, a couple theories that I've thought in my mind, and once again, these aren't scientific, but I know that we have specific enzymes to break down meat, and then we have enzymes to break down plants and plant fiber within our digestive tract. And I thought, well, maybe some individuals have more of one enzyme than another. They can just tolerate one of these better than the other. Maybe they have trouble breaking down meat. But for the majority of us, a balanced nutrition plan is going to be the best path. So here are a few things that vegans are at risk for, even more than vegetarians, because vegetarians can eat eggs, they can get some animal products in with animal protein. They fall into this as well, but not to the extent of being completely plant-based. So the first one, and one that I feel is really, I've got top three for importance. They're all important, but I've got some top three ones here in my mind. Number one would be sarcopenia, which is age-related muscle loss, but it can really occur at a younger age. It doesn't necessarily occur when we're older. Now, as women, when we go through menopause, we are extremely vulnerable to getting sarcopenia, which is skeletal muscle loss. It puts us at risk for many different things, including being severely injured, breaking a hip during a fall. That muscle is extremely protective. If we don't have enough muscle, we can become insulin resistant. So we have a problem with blood glucose regulation, and we can become pre-diabetic or diabetic if we do not have quality skeletal muscle along with the right type of nutrition to support that quality skeletal muscle. So that is a real big one if you are a woman over 45 that you should consider if you are completely plant-based, is that risk for sarcopenia. And the primary reason for it is not enough quality, complete protein. So yes, there's protein in certain plants and certain grains like quinoa. We often hear, oh, that has protein. And then nut butter, we'll hear, yeah, that has protein. But it's very low. And in the case of, say, quinoa, that's really more of a carbohydrate source than it is a protein source. It's not a complete protein source, which means it doesn't have all of the essential amino acids. And that's the key word, essential, meaning that as human beings, we need this for health. We need this to stay healthy, alive, regenerate certain processes within our body, support certain organs. We need that complete profile, amino profile, and you simply are not getting it in plants. Then there's the problem, of course, of needing to eat large quantities of carbohydrates, such as quinoa or chickpeas or lentils, in order to bring your protein count up. So when you bring your protein count up as a vegan, it's naturally going to raise the carbohydrate count as well. And I'm going to discuss that a little further in a moment. But number one is that muscle loss, and it's due to a lack of quality protein. Then you have the risk of osteoporosis, and this is due to vitamin D deficiencies, calcium deficiencies, and a creatine can play a role in this, and creatine also plays a role in the muscle support. So creatine is a supplement that's been around a long time. It really got a bad rap for causing kidney issues in individuals, but in the majority of healthy individuals, this can be a plus, especially for midlife women. Midlife women are more at risk for dementia and for Alzheimer's. And this particular supplement, which is actually found only in animal-based protein, so it's found in like herring and red meat, creatine, is one that can be essential for not only supporting muscle synthesis, ATP, which is the energy in the cells, but also for brain health. It's been really linked to brain health. So this is one I recommend for healthy women. Of course, always consult your doctor to include and to supplement with, because most of us simply aren't getting enough. We would have to eat so much animal product and we just would not be getting enough. But in vegans, they're not getting any. And this statistic really alarmed me. 17% of Americans are consuming absolutely no creatine. So I'm going to assume that that 17% is largely plant-based and they're just simply not getting it. Then you have, and the number three was difficult for me. It's kind of a toss-up. You have more of a risk for insulin resistance. So in other words, in vegans, a lot of times their blood glucose, they have high highs, low lows. It's what's called dysregulated. So rather than being balanced, they're getting these spikes. And typically this is coming because of the excessive amount of carbohydrates that they are needing to consume in order to get this protein in. And this is more important, packaged foods. Many people go vegan, and what do? They don't eat more plants, they eat more packaged foods that have an ad on the front or a label on the front that says vegan. And you see it on ridiculous foods where obviously, yeah, it's not an animal product. It's ridiculous, and they're labeling it vegan. It's kind of like years ago with the whole low fat, no fat kind of thing. And then come to find out people were consuming more sugar and higher refined carbs, and it actually had a negative effect on weight, so weight gain, and it had a poor effect on overall metabolic health because people were eating less healthy fats and they were eating more refined carbs and refined sugars. So we're seeing that now in the vegan world. People are buying vegan crackers. I had someone tell me the other day, I'm eating so healthy, Carol. I had vegan bread and I had vegan butter. And I'm like, no, where's the protein, first of all? And then what was in that vegan bread? Usually it's going to have seed oil, such as canola. And if you ever want to get completely grossed out, watch a video on how they make canola and how it smells so rank that they have to put ingredients in to hide the odor. I don't even want to say scent, the odor of this rancid oil. So you have your sunflower oil, which is different from sunflower seeds. I want to point that out. Sunflower seeds, totally different. Sunflower oil, highly refined. You've got your safflower oil, cottonseed oil, grapeseed oil, all the vegetable oil products that you will find in these types of breads. Same with gluten-free. It's really hard to find a gluten-free product that does not contain these seed oils, which are a poor form of energy for our bodies, for our brains, and just really should be avoided, in my opinion, really read those labels and avoid it as much as possible. So you have this insulin resistance that can be creeping up. I'm going to talk a little bit about a family member. His family member doesn't listen to my podcast or my YouTube channel, so I think I'm safe. But even if he did, he would know this was said in love. And I became very concerned about him. He is entirely plant-based and has been for several years now, convinced, absolutely convinced that he's doing something great for his body. And initially it was good. He lost weight, he looked a little better, he felt a little better because he was eating kind of a lot of junky, high fat with the kind of fats that you don't want, those types of things. And then he did do a pretty good job of introducing more plants and not just packaged food in. But I still see him doing things like buying a chip or a cracker and say, this is really good. There's nothing bad in it. There's no seed oils and it's vegan. But it is still a refined carbohydrate that really should be reduced as much as possible or avoided as much as possible. And so he had gone to the doctor and found out that he was right on the verge of insulin resistance. He was right on that line. And also, I noticed that he's been getting more and more frail. So I've been watching him lose so much muscle, and he is older. He is in his 70s. He's lost a lot of muscle, and he does work out. He does resistance training and strength training. But I had taught him how to figure out the grams of protein, and I asked him, how many grams are you getting? And he goes, oh, about 50. And I said, you're a 6-foot tall man. I'm a 5'4" tall, 120-pound woman, and I'm eating anywhere from 120 to 130 grams of protein per day. I said, it's not enough. And you can just see him getting more and more frail and whittling down. So it is a concern. There is this thin man. In a million years, you would never guess him to be on the verge of insulin resistance, but because of some of his packaged food choices and then also eating way too many carbohydrates and refined carbohydrates, he is now having this problem, and this is really quite common. Next up, and this is where I was debating this to be in the top 3, is depression and anxiety. So women over the age of 50, 30% of them are on psychiatric medications. And often this starts in perimenopause when they start having symptoms. A lot of doctors will prescribe anti-anxiety medication and they will prescribe antidepressants. And now I'm not anti-medication. There is a place and a time depending on that person's circumstances. So I'm not anti-medication. I realize for some people, this can be actually life-saving or really make an improvement in their life. But there are a lot of Americans, I believe, on this that perhaps that's just not the best path for them to be on. So you have 30% of postmenopausal women. That's actually a pretty high number on psychiatric medication. So there is more of a risk of depression, anxiety, and even eating disorders among vegans and vegetarians. And this is due to omega-3 and zinc deficiencies. That's omega-3 and zinc deficiencies. Then we have thyroid issues, hypothyroid issues, which is related to iodine and selenium deficiencies and is twice as common in women as it is in men, and more common in women who are in perimenopause and menopause. So there, and again, here are the midlife women. If you are on a plant-based diet, you're facing a lot of risk here. You're facing the skeletal muscle loss, your osteoporosis, insulin, the possibility of insulin resistance, psychiatric problems, anxiety, depression, and now hypothyroidism. So this is increased. This is where women in this midlife range and above really need to consider, is plant-based best for me, first of all? And second of all, if I feel very strongly about this for ethical reasons, because of the animals, I just don't want to do this, then how can I carefully plan my diet and supplementation to help myself have the best chance possible of avoiding some of these things? So I'm not telling you to stop being plant-based, but to just really take a look at, should I be? And then second of all, if I really want to be, what can I do to make this a healthier option for me? Next up, you have hair loss. Nobody wants that, men or women. And that's low protein. That's a zinc and iron deficiency. Skin problems such as rashes and eczema. That, once again, is a protein and zinc deficiency. And anemia is a big one. This is a big one in pre-menopausal women. So women who are in their 20s, 30s, 40s would experience anemia. And what comes along, and not every woman I'm saying, but a good lot of them, this is quite common, will experience this if they're on that total plant-based diet. This is a deficiency, obviously, in iron and B12. So with that, what happens is they can get an exercise intolerance. And I found this interesting because I had never heard that phrase before. But exercise intolerance, basically, they don't have the energy. So you have a woman, she's been super active. Maybe she's athletic, she's running marathons, she's doing century bike rides, and all of a sudden she has no energy for this thing because of these deficiencies that are leading her into anemia. So we talked about the essential amino acids, three of them that come to mind that are so crucial, that are simply not found in plants are leucine, isoleucine, and valine. So keep that in mind. You can supplement with these. I know that some vegans don't want to do that because they don't want any animal-based product, including a supplement, to come into their diet. But you have to start to weigh out the pros and cons of things and really look at your health and make the right decision. So a lot of institutions have hopped on board with being vegan, and there's been an almost, it feels like a political push, as I mentioned earlier. And there's been studies to come out. I'm not going to go through all of these. A good one to follow is Dr. Gabrielle Lyons, because she talks about some of these studies, and she talks about some of the research, the statistics, and really gives you a good solid view of what's going on in this whole movement toward being totally plant-based. And what has happened is there are research studies that have been, they're not, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say tainted. They are either very small population, or they haven't controlled for certain variables, or the people running it have a huge agenda that they're trying to push forward. So you've seen some institutions hop on, and I want you to be careful of institutions. Just because they have a fancy name does not mean that they have the right answers for this. Like the American Heart Association was really pushing the seed oils and canola oils. Come to find out, they were getting some donations from some of these seed oil companies. So you really got to start to question, where is the money coming from? What is their agenda? Who's funding? Who's behind? And really look at this. So the American College of Cardiology and American Heart Association in 2019 set forth guidelines that endorse a plant-based diet to prevent cardiovascular disease. And I'll say just right up front that I disagree with this, and I'll talk about it in a moment. A second institution put this forward, which I also disagree with. It is the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. They say that veganism or plant-based diet is healthful, nutritionally adequate, and may provide benefits in the prevention and treatment of chronic diseases, and is appropriate for all stages of the life cycle. And that simply is not true. Really look at it. If you've got a woman and she's 60 years old and she's looking down at sarcopenia, she's starting to lose her muscle, she's at risk for a hip fracture, she is becoming frail as she enters into these later years or 70, why would we have her eat only plant-based protein, which is not going to give her everything that she needs? And contrary to popular belief, you need more and not less protein as you get older. For both men and women, this is particularly true for women. When we lose estrogen, we lose our ability to synthesize protein. We lose our stimulus for our muscle. It's harder to take in all of the protein within a food. We need more. We even need digestive enzymes to help support that, because that becomes an issue as we get older and go through menopause. Now, they did say, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, that this only happens with plant-based diets if they are appropriately planned. So in other words, if they're not appropriately planned, these health benefits are out the window. So that I do agree with. You need to plan. And most vegans simply do not. I've worked with quite a few at this point, and I've worked with some vegetarians. And it's extremely, extremely difficult for them to get the protein in. I had one client, she was just like, I can't get rid of the belly fat. I can't get rid of the belly fat. I'm 66. I can't get rid of this belly fat. I said, it's because you're eating a diet that is extremely high in carbohydrates and low in protein. Your macronutrients are not balanced. And this is another issue that I see. We should be protein forward. That's the majority. And then fill your plate with those veggies. By all means, fill your plate with the veggies, cook them, ferment them, make sure that you're eating the appropriate amount. And then you're going to have the right balance of carbohydrates and fats. And the carbohydrate and fat balance depends on many different factors I won't get into here, including, how much muscle you have, your age, your stage of life, things such as that. There's even some genetic components in there. But it's always protein first with that fibrous vegetables, with those non-starchy veggies. And that's the majority of your plate right there. Well, if you are a vegetarian, that's not it. They're reaching for the cheese. Sometimes the fat content is very, very high in vegetarian diets. And then vegan, like I said, they are simply eating way too many carbohydrates and many times way too many refined ones. They're not planning out their diet. In the years that I have coached, and I'm turning 62, and I've been doing this for a good 12 years. In the years I've coached, and I've worked with different types of women in particular, and I used to work with men, I've only had one individual to carefully plan out their vegan diet, right down to the letter, track it in MyFitnessPal, and use the appropriate supplements. Only one, only one. The rest of the time, it's a struggle. It's a struggle. I feel like I'm pulling that person along, going, come on, you're not getting enough of this. We better do this. Let's try a supplement over here. Let's do this. And there's kind of a little bit of a resistance, a wall up. And I do understand not wanting to consume animal products. I do. I'm a complete animal lover. I have lots and lots of pets, love animals. And so I do get it. I do get that tug at the heart. But at some point, you've really got to take a look, I think, at your health. And then if you've chosen this lifestyle and you're like, you know what, there's no way, Carol, I can't eat a bite of chicken or beef. I just can't. I would gag on it. I'm not going to force that issue or insist that you do. But what I am going to say is, okay, you have chosen this lifestyle. Now take some responsibility for the lifestyle and see what you can do to make it work for you. See what you can do to bring it along. It's not impossible. The one individual I had was a man in his 30s, and he went on to put on a significant amount of muscle, lose body fat. It really did quite well, but only because he was focused, very focused. And most of the packaged foods, we pulled back away as much as we could. We couldn't pull everything back. And we had to use, of course, a protein powder. We had to use it twice a day and supplement with that. And then he had certain B vitamins and things that we supplemented with as well. So I talked about the omega-3 fat being so essential, the DHA, that you simply do not get if you are a vegan. You're not getting that critical DHA, omega-3 fat for brain development and brain support. It is absolutely crucial when children are growing up. They need that. They need that. And then as we get older, we need it again, especially as women. Once again, we're prone to that dementia. We're prone to the Alzheimer's. We need this support. And I'll give you a few statistics. I just want to dive into some other issues that come up with plant-based, and then I'll give you a few more on mental health that I think are so, so important. So another issue is digestive. And now, once again, not everyone's going to have this. You have outliers. But the majority of people that I've worked with that try going vegan and plant-based, the very first thing they come to me with is the gas and the bloating and all of the digestive issues. So I did dabble in both being a vegetarian and a vegan at one point in my life, so I feel I can speak into this somewhat. So in my 30s, the whole vegetarian thing was really big. Like I was saying, that was kind of a few decades back, and it was really big. People weren't really talking about being plant-based. So I decided it was healthier. I knew nothing about nutrition and dove in along with my husband, and we both got so skinny. Now, sometimes you'll see vegetarians really start to gain weight, but in my case, I got super skinny, as did my husband, and we just felt depleted. And so we just kind of said, you know what, this is not for us. Then, fast forward a few decades, this was about 4 years ago. I decided, I'm like, you know what, I'm getting some vegan clients. I really want to understand this lifestyle, and I want to be able to write their meal plan. And I can't do that if I don't eat that way. So I want to really give this a try, see if I feel better, put myself in their shoes, and get an understanding of this. So for a couple of weeks, I did this, and major digestive issues. I felt like my calorie count, not that I look only at calories, I don't, but my calorie count was way over the top. My carb count was way over the top. I was supposed to be leaning down at the time, and instead the opposite was happening, and I was very bloated. And I said, you know what? I've got a bodybuilding show coming up. This just doesn't feel good, and I don't like my stomach like this. And I went off and went back to the way I was eating and felt better, leaned out for the show, all was good. That was my personal experience with it. I found it almost impossible to get my protein in and keep my carbs down and keep my calories under control. So once again, we have these digestive enzymes within our bodies. So we have digestive enzymes that digest animal protein, and then we have some that digest the plant protein, fruit, and then plant fiber. So we have both, indicating that we are somewhere between a carnivore, a meat eater, and an herbivore. We're a combination of the two, because most of us, and again, there's bioindividuality, the microbiome is very individual. Most of us are going to fit better into that camp of needing both. So why is this taken off to such a degree? So I mentioned the influence of these organizations and institutions that are coming forward. They are largely connected to universities, colleges, and academia. Now, why would that be? Why are they so connected there? Well, the majority of vegans are college educated individuals. They're very health conscious. They're very aware of what's happening on the planet and environment and all of the climate change and all of the things. And that tends to be that community, and it tends to come from academia. Next up, you have a female, what they call a female gender bias. So 2 out of 3 vegans are female, so far more likely to be female. So you have that push forward. Then you have people just thinking it's healthier. A lot of times, just like the person in my family, they not only have a concern about the animals, but they actually do believe they're doing something for their longevity and health. And that is largely a media thing, a social media thing. You just see that bias start to come in. So there are 5 times more former vegans and vegetarians than current ones. So in other words, people tend to try it out like I did and find out, you know what, I've got digestive issues, maybe I'm losing weight, gaining weight, this isn't working. But there are 5 times more former vegans and vegetarians than there are current ones. Most people return to being an omnivore. So once more, an omnivore is a combination of the herbivore and the carnivore. Sometimes I get all these vores mixed up. I'll say carnivore when I mean herbivore and vice versa, but it's a combination of that plant based diet along with your protein that comes from animals. So once again, the problem is the refined grains, the sweetened beverages, the chips, the fries, the cookies. These are the problem with the vegan diet. All of the packaged food that you see at Whole Foods, Costco, you name it, name your store, it's there. These are what's associated with cardiovascular disease. And most of the time, studies done on meats, they're looking at processed, highly processed meat. They're looking at meat that's coming from fast food. They're looking at salami. They're looking at lunch meat. And of course, if you're eating that type of protein, that's not quality animal protein. And that's just as much of a problem as not getting enough protein. And that will increase your risk of cardiovascular disease. Saturated fats that are coming from the wrong type of protein, the wrong type of meats. So it's not coming from quality grass-fed, grass-finished beef and filet mignon and pastured pork and chicken and turkey and lamb and bison. You know, all of the good sources. You want your sources to be good ones. And unfortunately, we have to pay more, which is a sad thing, to get this quality meat. And I realize not everybody has access to that, but you can at least avoid the processed ones. So really the processed, ultra processed food, and I'm talking ultra processed, is the problem with cardiovascular disease risk. Cardiovascular disease risk is reduced by eliminating or reducing the intake of highly processed foods and meats, salami, sausage, bacon. You go to the deli, you don't know where that meat's coming from. It's kind of gross. Excess sugar, added sugars, refined sugars, and fried foods. So a big problem too with many of the things that I listed for the plant-based diet is the micronutrient deficiencies. These are linked to neurological, psychological, skeletal muscle problems, and immune system issues, as well as anemia. So supplementation is huge on a plant-based diet. And if you really feel strongly and you don't want to change that diet, I respect wherever you're at, and I respect women what they decide to do for their bodies. But do consider working with some type of functional practitioner, nutritionist, dietitian, coach that understands this. Supplement, test, get appropriate tests done to see where you're at. Supplement for B12, B2, niacin, vitamin D, zinc, omega-3, selenium, iodine, and of course, your protein supplementation. Remember that bone fractures are at an increased risk, so you definitely want to have this supplementation going and also to prevent anemia. Fermented foods are a good thing for all of us to include and a good way to get our vegetables, and even some dairy, if it's fermented, can be okay. For instance, the natural curing of butter can be quite beneficial. And you really want what's called a plant-forward omnivorous diet. So you've got your healthy protein that is quality, it's not processed, and it's not fried. And then you've got a plate that's filled with your vegetables. Now, the last few years, vegetables got a bad rap, or the last 2 years, I should say. And I even did a couple podcasts on it because I was like, wow, I couldn't believe the information coming out. And it was on the oxalates and sulfa content in certain vegetables that can be toxic to human beings. But really the issue comes more into how the vegetables are prepared, and then people having excessive amounts. So where I see the problem with, say, spinach and the oxalates and kale and the sulfa is people doing this juicing and they're doing smoothies and they are throwing excessive amounts of these raw vegetables and raw celery, raw kale, and they're overdoing it when maybe a half cup of spinach would be fine, or a cup of greens or whatever. They're just overdoing it. And I personally do better when my vegetables are cooked. I just digest them a lot better, so I stay away from the raw ones for the most part. So looking at those statistics for psychiatric disorders, in the study that I mentioned at the beginning of the show, hold on, taking a look at my notes here, and that study is I'm drawing a blank here, the vegan myth, debunking the vegan myth. They looked at over 4,000 individuals, and I just want to give you a few stats from the study. 4,181 adults. I don't know the ages. I've read through the study. I think they were younger, but I will link to the study in the show notes so you can check it out. I'm going to dive into it a little bit further myself. What they found was there were 35% of those with psychiatric disorders are vegan, 27% are vegetarian, and 21% are non-vegetarian. So in other words, they're eating more of that plant and animal-based diet. So you have a big disparity, 35% vegan and 21% non-vegan and non-vegetarian. 35% of those with anxiety disorder are vegan and vegetarian. 13% are non-vegan. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the eating disorder earlier. So there is some evidence that the eating disorders are higher in that group as well. Now, once again, I'm not talking about everyone on plant-based, every individual. This is not a generalization, but these are some general stats and trends that can be seen. So going and having your hemoglobin A1C, which is a reflection of your 90-day glucose level, average of your 90-day blood sugar glucose level. So hemoglobin A1C is good to look at, fasting insulin, fasting glucose, and find out if you have any insulin resistance that's creeping in. And of course, testing for those micronutrients as well, and testing for levels, your hemoglobin, testing for levels that would reflect anemia or that you're going toward anemia, particularly if you're premenopausal. And then, of course, looking at that exercise intolerance. If you're starting to be very, very tired, you're a premenopausal woman. So that's really what I have for you. And of course, looking at cholesterol levels, and I'll just name two here that are really important to look into. It's ApoB and ApoA1 and the ratio between the two. So that's ApoB, ApoA1, the ratio between the two. Someone who did a beautiful job of describing this is Dr. Peter Attia. His podcast is The Drive, and then he has a book out called Outlive, where he talks about this as well. So I won't go into it. He can describe much better what you should be looking for on that blood work. And then kidney levels, which I did forget to mention, because there can be some kidney damage if you're having some blood glucose dysregulation, blood vessels get damaged, and there can be some kidney issues as well. So I hope you found this helpful. Once again, my book really goes in depth into nutrition for midlife women and beyond. Really, if you're a woman that is, I would say, 35 and above. I talk about 40 and above, but for a lot of women, this shift begins to occur at 35. You're going to find things you can use to prepare you for perimenopause. If you're in perimenopause, let's say you're about 45, you're going to find things that will prepare you for menopause. Even if you have had, say, a hysterectomy, you're going to find some really good, solid information on things that may help. So I really do appreciate you joining me today. And wherever you are in this big wide world, I wish you every blessing. Until next time, bye-bye.